everyone. We are back with our fourth episode for the Monk Reality Show, and today we have someone special straight from Brooklyn, and it's a pretty early morning in Brooklyn, and we have Mr. Alfonso Medina. Why don't you give a bit of an introduction to our viewers?
Sure. So actually, it's a Madelon Group, and Madelon Group is a startup that we founded along with Dane and Joseph, my co-founders.
Okay.
Joseph is an architect, Dane is an operator. He founded one of the first co-living companies in the world a couple years ago. And we founded Madelon because we're super interested to make it possible for young people to live in cities.
That's awesome. And it's actually pretty amazing to be part of the very upcoming and flourishing in our sector in the real estate industry. So that's pretty great. So why don't you tell a bit about like what triggered Madelon Group to get into co-living and like majorly into real estate?
So I've actually I graduated from architecture. I did a master's in urbanism in SciArc a couple of years ago, and have been developing mostly residential projects for the past 15 years. Anywhere from a single family home to multifamily projects. Most of them have been spec housing projects. And about 3 years ago, along with a partner, we started exploring the possibility of doing projects that were mostly focused on rentals. And we wanted to do something that was different in an aspect that most spec real estate projects are just about the profit, right? And we were mostly focused on obviously finding a model that's profitable for developers, but that actually makes it affordable for people to live within the same neighborhood where you have higher end residential projects. So we came up on these kind of like new idea back then of co-living. The first projects were actually just starting not that long ago, the first more formal co-living projects. And we explored every possibility. We traveled around the world trying to understand how these buildings were working, how the communities were working. And we decided to actually design and build a co-living building from the ground up, which I think was very unique because most co-living buildings right now are actually just taking existing multifamily buildings and adapting them to co-living by basically just adding a couple of rooms. I think that's not the right way to actually make the community function as it should, or to really make people's lives better. The way that I think the approach to co-living right here in at least in the States has been, let's just take multifamily buildings, add more rooms, make it more profitable for developers, but you're not creating better experiences for people that are living there. So in the end, the periods of time that people actually live in these co-living buildings are quite short, and they become more of landing pads in a city like New York. Someone will move from another city, come to New York, live in a co-living building for 3, maybe 6 months, and then move somewhere else.
Actually, I've seen a couple of co-living operators and their prices. It's quite expensive compared to taking a shared accommodation. And also what I've seen is all these, so whenever someone asks these co-living operators why the prices are so high, they tend to give a reason that they are providing a community aspect to it. Is what I feel is a good add-on compared to just providing a shared space, then adding a community on top of it, because someone who's coming, who is new to the city, for him, finding a community is more important than finding a space, because space is everywhere. It's just a community he's looking for. What do you have to say about that?
I mean, I agree with part of that statement, but from my personal experience, for example, I think this is my mission, right? I'm super focused on actually making a better, there's nothing more important for people than the place that they live. It's where you wake up every and it's insane to think that people can't afford a decent place to live. So in order to really be able to develop the product that we wanted to do, I 2 years ago, I put all of my stuff into a warehouse
Oh.
and just decided to become a kind of like almost a nomad and really test out all of these spaces. So from staying months on in different hotels, staying in different Airbnbs, trying to understand how people that are 21, 22, 23, 24, moving into a city like New York, how they live, what they actually can afford to get. And I spent the last 6 months in a co-living community from one of the biggest operators here.
Oh.
I mean, I would say quite expensive. For a couple $100 more a month, you could get your own apartment.
Yeah.
And as you were saying, they're pitching you this like community component to it. But honestly, I mean, who the fuck needs to go bowling on a Friday night? I mean, that you pay $300, $400, $500 more for that. I think like that is what they're selling right now, and the demand for a product like this is so big that the occupancy is super high. And that's why they're charging so much money for it. But there will come a point where like there will be a lot of supply and people are going to focus on what's actually important. And that's not going bowling with your...
That's actually a very amazing point, very good point you have made. Co-living is not that rosy how it is shown to the world. And also I wanted to understand, like you said that you started the first building, like you guys designed from scratch, purpose-built co-living space. Could you tell me a bit more about that? Because I'm really interested when it comes to a purpose-built place. And also when it comes to the design, what exactly goes into the design when you are like planning a co-living space?
I mean, we've designed and built more than 40 different residential projects. That's a lot of kitchens, a lot of beds. From the design perspective, I think that our advantage has been that we actually, at least in our practice in Mexico, we actually not just design, but we actually build the spaces. And then we're the ones handing the keys to whoever's moving in. So we actually get to see not just the process of how you do the real estate development, how you build it, but how people live in them, and to really understand through the years how people use the space, what's good, what's not, like just learn through iterations and through the practice of place making. So when we were designing this space, it was basically, and the way that we saw it, the design and the construction of it was just the very first phase and the like 10% of what the project was, because for us it was more of a lab, and a lab where we could like test and iterate and just understand what these people needed to live in a community. So it was amazing. First of all, we designed a structure that was very flexible in a sense that it's a concrete structure, concrete columns, beams, and slabs, but the rest of it is just flexible so that you can actually change the configuration of the spaces through time. So all of the mechanicals, everything's like just there. We didn't hide anything. It's a very like functionalist building. And the advantage was that we got to design multiple different configurations for co-living. So there's like some apartments in which you share a kitchen, living room, dining room. And then there's 4 bedrooms in which each bedroom has their own bathroom. And that was very important to us. If this is a permanent solution, and that's what we want it to be, it's not just a temporary housing solution. People do actually need their own bathrooms. I think that people are willing to share a lot, but having your own bathroom is important. We designed some other spaces in which you could actually walk in from the exterior of the building, well, not the exterior, but like the communal areas in the building to your own bedroom without going in through this semi-private, semi-communal kitchen, living, dining room space. So there's like different layers of privacy. People sometimes want to be part of a community, but there's days that you don't want to be dealing with anyone else, right? So giving people that option of like, how do you want to live? It's flexible enough that you can choose different ways. We did some open plan studios in which people could actually be very flexible in the way that they furnish their space. So some spaces were furnished some others weren't, because we wanted to give people flexibility and understand what they would do with their own space, right? Because I mean, especially right now, living through this moment in which we're all asked for social isolation. I think it's people are working from home, so to have a space in your home, which is like nice to work in. We really encouraged in this building for people to have live workspaces, which is sometimes not encouraged in a lot of these buildings, but we encourage them because for us, the community is not just the people that live there, but also the people that they connect with. And then midway through the construction of this project, in which we had some prefab components, like the slabs, for example, were poured somewhere else, and then a crane brought them and installed them. We figured that the way to actually really exponentially increase this housing stock is to focus on the development of through technology, not just the software, which is what a lot of this co-living operators are focused on. Yeah, you have an app where you can talk with your roommates. Okay, great. You're not changing the world through that, but like to also really focus on the hardware and improving the hardware. And that's why, like, for us, changing the building, the design of the building aspect of it is super important. So we actually started working with some prefab factories around the world in order to develop also this components. Our office is actually here in the Brooklyn Navy Yards in the full stack factory. So we've been able to actually come really close and collaborate and be on the factory floor as much as we want to understand how this new technology and how these new construction systems actually work and how we can benefit from that and bring that into our co-living buildings.
So generally, like when you're getting into, let's say that you're taking a property, I mean, like you have taken a land and you have started building from scratch. Using your methods, what will be your duration to like build, purpose-built co-living with around 200 rooms? How much time would it reduce in terms of percentage? That will be actually really helpful for us to understand.
So I think one of the first things and one of the first premises we had when we came together as a group and we founded Madelon is that we're gonna focus on the user experience. That's a big part of us, right? In which I don't think a lot of co-living operators are focusing on that. They're focusing on the developers as their clients, but not the people living there as their clients. So for us, that community aspect is super important. And we decided that we wouldn't do buildings that were over 100 people, because that's like you as a social being, as a human, you can only actually connect to 100 people. So there's really no reason to do buildings that are larger than that. A lot of co-living operators are pushing to do buildings that are larger, that are 300, even 700 people, because obviously from the real estate side of it or from the operation side of it, it's much more profitable. It's easier to manage. You're doing one single project. But our focus is always to stay under 100 people, just so that the community actually does feel like a community. And it's not like you're living in this huge, massive dorm, right?
That's actually a very good point you made, that a person can actually connect to like a maximum of 100 people. And right now, everyone is trying to bring in like a property which has more than 300, 400, 500 rooms. Later on, it's going to be a very big hassle. There is going to be a bit of a churn, is what I feel.
Actually, the first thing we created as Madelon was our RedTech platform, which is our real estate development technology platform, which is a term that we hadn't heard of, but we had to come up with because everyone's in ConTech, which is like construction technology, or PropTech, property technology. But we feel that we need to actually be able to englobe all of this into one single platform, which is our RedTech platform. And the first thing that we did was this tool in which you basically take out all the very complex process of evaluating land. Because for a developer to start a ground up project, they get offered a site, they need to work with an architect in order to analyze the zoning and code of that site. Once they figure out if it works for the zoning that they would need to do a co-living building, then they go through different iterations of designing architectural layouts, all of this, and there's the complexity of doing the financial underwriting. So it's a long-term process. What our tool did and does is that with you just inputting the address of that site and a price of the site, the tool goes automatically through the rest of the process. It'll go up to the point of giving you automatically generated layouts. And that's why it's very important for us to work with these prefab factories, because we already have the components that will make up our buildings. So this algorithm already designs the layout for you, gives you how many rooms you'll be able to get there based on zoning and height restrictions, maximum square footage of construction, analyzes construction cost, then goes into operations. It'll tell you based on the rooms, based on the amount of, we built in comps into that, and it pulls some other comps from sites like StreetEasy. It'll tell you how much a room should be there, tells you your revenue, your NOI. So basically a developer, by the end of this process, which takes 3 minutes, will know if it's better for them to develop a co-living building there or a multifamily building there. And then they can just with a click, start the process, and we'll guide them through the rest of the development process, basically.
That's actually pretty great. Just looking at land and then knowing what would be better. That's actually a pretty great product. So right now, since there is a housing crisis which is going on in all the cities, major cities of USA, is it happening in such a way that people are building co-living facilities a bit in the outskirts of all these urban areas, or how is it happening out there?
So obviously we're very focused right now, at least for the time being, on the densest and most urban cities, because that's where housing is actually much more expensive. But there's some other very interesting startups also working in more of suburban type settings. Startups like in Phoenix, just single family homes that you can rent out the bedroom. And I think it's great because even there you're going to have even more affordable housing solutions. We're very focused on cities where it's difficult to actually increase the stock because you have so many complexities of just doing ground up construction. And that's where we see our strength in, we have developed this process to actually do that ground up aspect of the development much easier for any developer, and that's why we're actually focused on dense cities right now, like New York, LA, etc.
So what are the factors do you consider while building a co-living facility, from a design side, from a locality side? Any of the factors would be really great out here.
I think that we're very focused on how can we make this a product that's actually easier for a developer to develop. Financially, it'll be a better decision. We can increase the density of people living there within our buildings, and we can create a better experience for our users, because that's the only way that we can make this something that's actually exponential, and that through the amount of rooms we're creating, we can actually lower the prices. The same importance we're giving to developers, our users will have in our buildings. A lot of people have focused on the communal aspects of this, and having one beautiful kitchen for 15 people or one beautiful living. But the rooms themselves are there's no design to it, right?
Yeah.
You arrive the first day on your you moved to New York, you arrived to this beautiful brownstone building that was turned into a co-living building. You go into the room, which is where actually most people spend most of their time. There's nothing, there's no design, there's a mattress, and that's it. And for us, I think we need to take much more learnings from the hospitality world. And that's why in hospitality, brands have become so important, because they place so much emphasis on the design and on the experience, and rooms are beautiful. And that's what what we've actually developed with our rooms. We're working with an amazing creative director that she's focused like completely on that experience of every minor detail of thinking, like where you'll store your stuff, where you can work from within your bedroom, how the bathroom layouts work within our bedrooms. Like we've actually put a lot of time and energy into solving that, which for us is the most important thing, right? I think your own personal private space is very important.
Any person will spend, let's say, 1 hour of his day while engaging with the community, but most of his time is spent in his own room. And if the room is not well designed, then the entire experience takes a hit, is what I feel. So you have been in the development industry, working with a lot of co-living operators. What do you think is a challenge which, as an industry, the co-living is facing right now in USA?
I would say the biggest challenge is right now that the ones that are really, or that have been pushing co-living for the last few years, are the co-living operators. But again, as you said, they're just operators, and that is their background, and not even their background. Most companies were founded by, great entrepreneurs that were like, oh, I was living with a roommate, so I decided to launch a co-living company. But they actually don't have that much experience in either design or real estate. They've managed to convince developers to turn multifamily buildings into co-living buildings because, obviously it increases your NOI, your revenue by 20, 30%. So every developer is super happy with that. And these operators have seen that this model works so great that they've raised a lot of VC money, put it into their marketing and social platforms, and just gone out there and turned so many buildings into co-living buildings. But within the last couple of months, of last year, at least 2 of the big co-living operators here in New York went under. Because it's a very difficult business, and it's the same as WeWork, right? You're raising all this money, you're not profitable, you're not focusing on the user experience. So it's kind of like a bubble, and we see that as a risk, because like right now developers are super excited with co-living, but once this companies start going under, and that has happened, developers are very risk adverse, and they'll just go back into multifamily and take away this amazing new product that could solve a lot of problems. So I think that in the end, it's very important to really understand the development side of it, the real estate development side of it, the property side of it, and it's all a numbers game, right?
Till now, I didn't think in that way, because everyone is just raising money and nobody comes from a real estate background. And it's just that bubble everyone is living in. So everyone is just fueling into that bubble. Maybe down the line, it's going to burst. And then actually what you said just now, people are not looking at the development side of it. I think that's going to become true, is what I feel as well. Moving on to my last question. What do you think is going to be the future of co-living in upcoming years?
I think it's super exciting. I think when we started this, the first thing, or the first ideas, what is our objective? And our objective is to democratize housing. Co-living, right now we're starting with obviously a certain segment of the population for co-living, which is younger people. But co-living, in the end, we're moving into a sharing economy, right? So everything will be co-living. We need to optimize. We need to, as you were saying when we started this conversation, like our world needed our planet needed a break, right? So we need to optimize resources in every sense. And this just like, especially this moment we're living in, will give us time to really think and evaluate the way we live, right? And co-living and sharing resources within buildings, within your communities is one of the most important aspects of how we can actually save our planet. And if you're going to sustainability for us is not just focused on talking about energy and light and power and air, but it's also focused really on how can you create sustainable communities. And for us, co-living is that answer. And it's imagine like co-living buildings for older people, for senior people. Technology really has found a way to connect us in some aspects of our lives, but it has really isolated us in other aspects of our lives. And we're going to come back and reevaluate, as I was saying, the way we live. And I think that designing buildings in a different way, operating them in a different way, being much more focused on sharing the few resources that we have, and just being able to again make more affordable housing and more affordable housing that's actually experience driven will be co co-living for very different sectors of our society.
That's actually a very nice point to put up and to end the show. I really thank you, Alfonso, to join us on the show. Do you have any final words for our viewers?
I mean, it's crazy right now. Here in New York, everything is changing day by day. We don't know if we'll be able to go outside of our homes tomorrow. Interesting moment. It's hard, obviously, because a lot of jobs will be lost. But I think we really need to see this as an opportunity to slow down and really think of the way that we want to live. And as real estate developers, as co-living operators, really focus on what we can offer people, how we can make people's lives better through the buildings that we're designing, that we're operating, and focus on that, on user experience.
That's great, Alfonso. It was really great connecting to you, and the points you put up, the insights you gave are amazing. And nobody actually, I mean, a lot of people would have thought, but I think I didn't think in that way. And it's going to be a crazy thing to look out how the co-living industry is going to turn out in coming years.
Thank you guys so much for the work that you do, the report that you put out right now, obviously in such a nascent industry. It's very important for all of us to collaborate. It's not a competition. The market is so big. So let's just make it better for everyone.
I think I'm going to come back to you with the next year report. I'm really going to come back to you for some of the insights, and please note down some of the insights which will be really helpful for me for the next year's report.
Will do. Looking forward.
So now to our viewers, do subscribe to our channel and keep coming up for the new content which we keep coming up with.